Heal Yourself with Sarah Dawkins, Episode 10, with guest Rachel Turner. Hey Rachel, thank you for joining me. Welcome to Heal Yourself, the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah. It's really good to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Let me just tell people about you. So you are an online coach supporting the Irritable Bowel Disease community to reduce symptoms, boost energy and self-belief, to reclaim their health and embrace life using the magic inside them. Rachel's passion for health started in 2004 when she was diagnosed with colitis. Rachel spent years researching, studying, and implementing lifestyle changes to recover her health. As a result of this, Rachel supports the global IBD community to manage IBD and reduce symptoms so they can reclaim their health and have confidence in their bodies and in their lives. Wow, how fabulous.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm very grateful for what I do now.
And how did you get to become what you do now? Can you tell us about your own healing?
Yeah, so it was, as you just mentioned, I first got sick in 2004 and it came seemingly out of the blue. I was on holiday having a great time and then became very seriously ill in the matter of minutes. And it was a huge shock, and it took some months to get a diagnosis. And it took me years of going down the usual routes, taking advice from doctors and surgeons and consultants and taking different sorts of medication. And they told me that really what I was living with was incurable. They could try and manage it with medication, but that was really all I could get from that side of things. So I went down that route for quite a long time, but I never felt that comfortable with it. It always felt like it wasn't in my control. I'm a bit of a control freak. And I kind of thought, if the medications ever don't work, where does it leave me? So it's kind of like this kind of reliance made me feel disempowered with my own health. So I started to look at other options. What else can I do to support myself while I'm waiting for things to change? And that's when I became much more aware of diet, supplementation, lifestyle changes, and also all the different kinds of holistic therapies that are out there for us to try to balance and support our bodies while we're getting back to a state of recovery, and then for maintenance. So I think I went on a very big journey of trying all kinds of different things in order to get my recipe for good health. And I still maintain that today. But for how it came about that I started to work in this area was that I was in a very stressful career in IT security for about 20 years. And I got to the point where I realized that I might have been good at what I was doing, but it wasn't good for me or my body. So I had to give up that career. And that is when I fully recovered my health, took a much more in-depth view into the body in terms of a functional medicine approach. But then I became much more interested in how the subconscious mind plays a huge role in what we see in our lives and how our physical body reacts to how we think. And that's kind of how I came to do what I'm doing. And because my experience was ulcerative colitis, which is part of the inflammatory bowel disease umbrella, I now support people all over the world with all forms of IBD to help them overcome their own health challenges and become symptom-free or reduction in symptoms, largely using the power of the mind.
Our minds are so powerful, aren't they?
Yeah.
So powerful. And we only have to look at the placebo effect and the nocebo effect to understand how powerful we really are.
Yeah, it's amazing. And imagine what more we could find out if they started to study that as part of medical trials. It's dismissed, isn't it? But really, that's where the magic is, whether people are getting worse because of the nocebo effect or that they're seemingly getting miraculously better because of the placebo effect.
Absolutely. And I'll just explain it just in case anybody doesn't know what the nocebo effect is, because it's not as well spoken about as the placebo effect. And the nocebo effect is the same thing that if you're told you're going to have symptoms, you can then manifest those symptoms because of the power of the doctor. Whereas the placebo effect is if you believe this pill, this sugar pill is going to heal you, you can heal. So it is the power of the mind, isn't it? That it's where your belief sits, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a study, I think it was last summer. It was front page news, not that I look at the news very much, but it was about statins and the harm the bad press around statins was causing a great deal of harm to people taking statins because they were believing they weren't going to help, or worse, they were dangerous. Therefore, there was a sharp decline in people responding well to them and adverse effects from the statins. So what the article was about was how they were going to change people's view of statins and start to get more good publicity around them so that people would feel safer taking them. Whereas I was reading it going, wow, surely what they should be doing is looking at the power of the mind and how those people have told themselves this is dangerous, and then it was literally becoming dangerous in their bodies.
Yeah, it's I work with the power of the mind with my clients too, and the changes in when you see them change their mindset, the changes in their health is transformational, isn't it?
Yeah, it blows me away every time. I'm never going to get bored of it because everybody's different as well, aren't they? I've had clients where they come with a whole range of terrible symptoms such as, pain, fatigue, urgency, heavy blood loss. So anybody that listens to this with IBD, you'll know what I'm talking about. Fear and anxiety. And I have had clients where after one session, the symptoms stop. And I'm not saying that like, wow, aren't I amazing? Aren't they amazing?
Yeah.
That they can spend an hour working on something they've not worked on before. And they almost can't believe the shift that's happened after they've tried everything else, but they just hadn't got round to trying what is going on in my mind.
Absolutely. And I think so many people are not aware of how powerful our mind is, that it can manifest the symptoms. And the symptoms aren't psychological. They're really happening in our bodies as a consequence of the thought process that we're having.
Yeah, exactly that.
So it's not, the pain is really pain. The loss, the blood loss is really blood loss. But actually, when you backtrack and look at the root cause of that, there's a few areas of root cause, but predominantly I'm finding, and possibly you're the same, that there's an emotional factor to it.
Yeah, hugely. And I've seen it with myself. I had a really great diet. I was doing everything I should do. And yet something could happen in my life that I wasn't expecting, something very stressful for me. And then symptoms would return. So you can't put it down to the diet. You can't put it down to the supplements. I was doing everything I needed to be doing. And yet something would come out of the blue and hit me from the side emotionally. And the stress of that for me was enough to trigger symptoms. And I see that with clients, and I work with globally renowned IBD nutritionists. And even they will say they can get a client to being symptom-free on the labs and, in everyday life. And yet they can get intensely angry about something or have an argument or something very stressful happens, and they can go straight back to where they started.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting that those stressful responses can be different in everybody depending on the emotional trauma from way back when? So yeah. I personally manifest stress as eczema. And it's my skin speaking to me. So, and you clearly manifest stress in your bowel. And we're all so different. And I think it relates to what went on with who for how long, and our own perception of that, because our life is coloured by our own experiences, isn't it?
Yeah, completely, because it's entirely our own perception of what our life is, isn't it? You could have two people on the same journey on a train, but one person's experience will be different to the other depending on what you're seeing it as. And we can you can put that into everyday life and all of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And those symptoms, they're speaking to us, aren't they?
Yeah, completely.
We see them as messages. The doctor sees them as something that needs to be stopped.
Yes, there's a fantastic book, there's lots, but Gabor Mate talks about one of his books, When the Body Says No. And that's a fantastic, book for anybody that's struggling with any type of sickness ongoing. It starts to actually profile the type of person and how they think, and it makes complete sense.
Absolutely, I've got that book. It's fabulous, and Louise Hayes as well, and Deb Shapiro, about the body speaking the mind, and it's about trying to understand what the symptoms are saying, isn't it? So for me, it's like my skin's screaming out, "Stop the stress!"
Yeah.
And everybody's symptoms are different. The messages behind them are also different.
Yeah, so it's a collection of symptoms given a name, but really what's going on behind that is individual to that person.
Yes. And probably in the same line of work that we're doing, our role is to help that client, that person, to find what the root cause of that symptom is, because it is, as you say, it's specific to them. And once they know what the root cause is, they can then do some work around healing that. So it's about understanding the symptoms to find the cause, to be able to heal the cause. And then the symptoms just go away because we've healed the cause. So our body doesn't need to express those symptoms anymore.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what kind of problems are you seeing with your clients? Are they all that? What kind of root cause of their symptoms?
As you just said, it's entirely different for each person. So a lot of the work I do, it naturally does go back to childhood. We don't do it on purpose, but because the methods I use often will find the root cause of a feeling or a problem. When did it start? And often it goes back to, under 10 years old. It could even be, under 5 years old, sometimes teenage years. But it makes sense that it goes back to that place because a lot of what we learn about life, we learn before we're 7 years old. That's when we're highly impressionable. We're only creating a certain range of brain waves so that we can take on as much as we can like little sponges. And we learn about life at that point. And we learn all kinds of lessons about how to survive and show up in the world, but they're not always beneficial. So I might find that a root cause is not necessarily one thing, but it could be just a general sense of not feeling safe, not being good enough. What else comes up? Expectation being put on us and feeling like you're constantly trying to meet others' expectations. It can be a general disconnection from who we really are. It can be suppressed anger and frustration as well. But this can all be wrapped up with other things. And it can all stem from things at school, parental upbringing, and it's never anyone's fault. It's just, the way life is. But it's, if I listed down everything I've come across, I could probably write a book on it. It is so varied. But the important thing is there are methods out there to help anyone in any situation start to find out what theirs might be. And even if we don't find exactly what it is, it doesn't mean that you're stuck and that you're always going to suffer. Even if we can just start to allow the subconscious mind to be shifted and changed for the better, we don't have to know all the nuts and bolts of it. It's just about the ability to change for the better.
Yeah, and I think as well the acceptance, not necessarily going back and digging it all over, but to accept that something happened. And it doesn't even have to be something huge that happened, does it? It can be something small, like somebody I spoke to earlier said their sibling teased them as a child, which led to a huge range of health problems as an adult. So something as simple, if you like, as being teased as a child by another child versus physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. There's when you look at the spectrum, there's such a lot that it could be. And because we're all so different, that something maybe small that happened as a child will then manifest into huge problems as an adult.
That's right. And it all depends on that individual, doesn't it? Like you said, because you can have people that come with a lot of troubles, but they're seemingly coping okay with it. But somebody else can have something that seems to be what we would call a small t trauma. But if it's had a deep enough impact on them, and if the mind has taken it on as a really core belief, a limiting belief about how they are in the world, you know, that person will have been carrying a story about being ridiculed when they were young, and it's how they perceive it. That is how it can become highly charged when they're older, and the inflammation can start.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we validate their feelings as well, because you know that some problems that I've encountered is not being validated as a child, not being seen, not being heard, not being listened to or validated. So I think we need to validate that their feelings, that whatever it was that's caused them to manifest the symptoms now is valid, and their feelings are valid. And then we can start working with them. First of all, accepting what's happened before we go into it and look at it at a deeper level, if that's possible. But it's not always possible with everyone, is it?
Yeah, and it's not always needed either, is it? It just depends on the work that needs to be done at the time. And also, I'm a big fan of, you know, that we're not looking to blame anyone. It's no one's fault. It's no one's fault. Even if there's anger and resentment towards somebody externally, there's often anger and resentment towards themselves. But it's not a blame game. It can be a forgiveness game, and that has to be dealt with quite carefully and on the client's terms. And there's some really lovely ways to go about that. But we're not looking to point the finger. We're just looking to acknowledge it, validate it, and then release it, so that the person can then decide how they want their body and their life to be.
Yeah, because we come into this life and there's no book of what to expect and how to be and what to do, is there? So we just go through life with things that happen to us as we're children, that, you know, we have no control over, and then as we're adults, that programming then takes us through, and we tend to recycle our past into our present and our future, don't we? Unless we become conscious of what's happening right here, right now. Why did I have that reaction? What's the belief that underlies that reaction? What emotion goes with it? And where did it come from? Is it really mine? And quite often we're just running our lives in our through our subconscious patterns and behaviors that we're not even aware for a majority of the time what's underpinning the behavior and the beliefs and the emotions that we're having. So I think recognizing those to start off as a starting point helps us to assess, you know, are these beliefs really mine? Is that really what I believe? Where's that emotion come from? And acknowledging that we're having this, we're feeling this, but also that we've got the ability to change as well, because nothing's set in stone.
No, absolutely not. And, you know, what you just said then was really interesting. And then a little statistic came into my mind. We spend 95% of our day in our subconscious mind, 95% of the day running this outdated programming, largely outdated, in the back of our mind, and we're not even aware of it. We are literally on autopilot, running those same old messages, running the same old memories that upset us from when we were young. And we can only look at those memories from when we were young, can't we? We're kind of seeing it. So the example you gave earlier about the adult that was picked on as a child by their sibling, they're still running that they were until you started helping them, still running that in the background as that child, very hurt, because that's kind of where we get stuck. So all this stuff is running in the background. And yes, it's the power of knowing that we are not set in stone, and we are here to change and evolve right until our last breath.
Yes, absolutely. And that we can, you know, we don't have to, just because it's our belief, or it was our belief until right now when we've become present with it, we don't have to continue that belief. It's okay to change. And I wonder sometimes if people get stuck in that belief, well, you know, that I've always had that belief, so I'm always going to have that belief. Well, it's like saying we've always done it this way, so we're always going to do it this way, you know, but why? If we can change something that will help us and help us to heal, why would we not want to do so?
Yeah, we're creatures of habit, aren't we? And then you start to get into the realms of, some people call it secondary gains. And, you know, we can get quite attached to how we are, how we think and how we behave, and the patterns that we have, because it makes us who we are. But then there's also another element where if people may feel unsafe changing this, because it could make them feel at quite a deep primitive level that they are not honouring their family, that they're not part of the tribe, if you like, or collection of people they have come from. So there is this fear of being an outcast. And of course, this is not conscious thinking. This is all the stuff that's going on again in the background. But there are all of these ways that we can address that so that people can feel safe all the way through and know that they can change, that they can be willing to change. It can be simple, and they can still honour everybody that's come before them and still honour their mum and dad and their siblings, but do it on their own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And that involves boundaries, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot.
I've found a lot of people, and myself included, until I understood and did a lot of inner healing work, was that I had no boundaries. I was just an open book. And it wasn't until I started setting boundaries that I realized how my life was before I had the boundaries. And the boundaries are needed because we need to look after ourselves, don't we? It's about, we're allowed to look after ourselves and care for ourselves and love ourselves. We don't have to be the givers all the time.
And also, if we can set those boundaries for ourselves, we can give the best of ourselves to others when we choose to. And we're also then allowing them to take more responsibility for themselves so that they can in turn set their own boundaries. So they're not putting such reliance on us to act or behave a certain way or make things right, whatever it might be in the individual's case. So there's a lot of power. I'm a strong believer that if we do the work for ourselves, it ripples outwards. And then it helps everybody either do their own work, or they can just pick up on the change within us, and it helps them make the changes within them.
Yes, yeah, because when you see somebody change and heal and evolve in front of your eyes, they become different people. And I've had conversations with other people and say, as we change and heal and evolve, not everybody that's around us when we were sick will stay when we change from that caterpillar to a butterfly. And that's okay. We have to be okay with that because we become different people as we heal. And the people that resonated with us when we were sick might not be ready to do their own healing work. And in which case they may fall away and out of our lives. And it's not that we don't want them as friends. It's just that, that what brought us together may no longer be there as we change. But we have to be okay with that. And that's a big part of people who are people pleasers. Sometimes worry about the people that they might not be pleasing as they evolve and heal, that they might lose. And they would see that as a negative aspect of the healing process in the losing of somebody.
And that if they stay stuck there, then that in itself can start perpetuating inflammation, can't it? Because they're not being true to themselves, which is really what the body wants us to do. It is shouting at us to be true to ourselves. And if we're, like you said, still hanging on to that people pleasing, that's not being authentic.
No. And being authentic is part of the healing process, isn't it? Because as we learn to be who we are before we became who we became, to people please because we wanted to be liked, we have to understand that it's okay to take all these layers off that we put on to help us fit in with other people. And as we take these layers off, it's like peeling an onion. We find who we are at our core. And it's sometimes it's not the person, it's quite a long way away from the person that we used to be when we come back into ourselves. But that again needs understanding as part of the healing process, that we will change. There is no two ways about it.
Yeah, because I think that was something I was going to say. It's that phrase, isn't it? You can't, and somebody very amazing in the past said it, but you can't heal in the same place you got sick. So that's not just, that's everything, isn't it? That's all lifestyle factors. That's the environment, your diet, the people you hang out with, the community you live in, the work you do. But it's also the mind, the environment, the mind's environment, isn't it? It's how we look at the world, how we perceive our environment. You can't fully heal in the same place you got sick.
Yeah. And a quote that got me through my healing, a really big quote was, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Henry Ford. And that really kick-started my healing, because I didn't want to be where I was. I wanted to be in a different place and healed and happy. So I had to, that helped me to push out of my comfort zone, because when I was really sick with a suicidal depression, I didn't want to do anything. And my comfort zone just literally shrank into next to nothing. So anything that took me outside the house was pushing my comfort zone. And the feelings of anxiety and nervousness as I stepped into the person I wanted to be was huge. But in doing so, every time I stepped out of that comfort zone, which made my comfort zone bigger, I built the confidence to keep doing that. And the more confident the more confident I was, the more courage I developed to step out into bigger and bigger things. But you have to really dig deep to push that comfort zone, don't you? To step out of who you were to want to step into who you want to become.
Yeah, and it does take bravery, and it does take determination, and you're an amazing example of that. But the magic that can be on the other side of that can be unimaginable for a lot of people, but it's because we've not seen a glimpse of it at that time. It feels too big or too difficult, and then all the self-doubt comes in, all the fear-based thinking that keeps you stuck in that place, even though you do not want to be in that place whatsoever. It's like a hell. But in some ways, sometimes for people, that they prefer that hell than the unknown.
Because it's the devil, you know.
Yeah, and also you quoted Henry Ford, and then it made me think of another quote of his: "Whether you think you can or you cannot, you're right." And it's
Absolutely.
just like, oh, of course, if you're
Yeah.
telling yourself I can do this, likelihood is you will.
Yeah.
But if you're telling yourself I can't, then you're going to get what you ask for.
Absolutely. And I do love that quote as
Yeah,
well. It's all about mindset at the end of the day, and that ties in with the placebo and nocebo effect. You know, we can do whatever we think we can do. And I think it was was it Elon Musk? No, it was Richard Branson said, say yes to the things that you have no idea on how to do, and learn how to do it on the journey as you get there. And I think sometimes, you know, it's okay to take the baby steps initially as you start out on your healing journey, or to start out making those changes. But sometimes I think you've just got to take that leap of confidence
yeah,
into the unknown, because, you know, if you step into that void, nature abhors a void, so it will be filled. And it's that whatever's going on in your mind, how you think that will be is how it will be.
yeah. That's brilliant advice. And it's Dr. David Hamilton kind of just shortens it to winging it. There's nothing wrong with winging it,
Oh,
because
yeah, yeah.
you're never going to be fully ready. You're never, when you're going to wake up and say, oh, today's the day I'm completely ready. No, there's always going to be something where you think, oh, not yet. But just take that step. Take whatever step you feel is right, to step out of your comfort zone, or look at something slightly differently, or don't necessarily just believe the narrative you're being given on your health today. There is an infinite array of options open to you. You've just got to find the ones that you're curious to and that feel right.
Yeah, absolutely. And step into those. And initially start with baby steps, the really tiniest thing that you can do, you know, so tiny it seems ridiculous that it wouldn't even do anything. I read a book, I can't even think what it's called now. It's got a Japanese name, and it's literally take the tiniest step that you can. So it recommended somebody do 1 minute of marching exercise in front of the TV every day, and build on it. And by doing the tiniest little thing that you think you could do, like go out and pick one weed out of the garden, and then build it up. And in doing such tiny things, it bypasses that subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind doesn't wake up to it and start alerting you that there's danger, because it thinks, wow, a minute walking on the spot, marching, or one weed out the garden, I don't need to worry about that. You know, I'll just keep plodding on in autopilot. but those little tiny things then start to build up, and it's that snowball effect.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I ask my clients, what's the tiniest thing that you can do? And then as they start building up that confidence to step out and do a little bit more, we look at the bigger things. And then, you know, can you take that leap of faith and do that really big thing? Or are we still going to keep going with the tiny bits? Because as you know, we both know, everybody is so unique. And we don't want to push their buttons and knock them back. But by the same token, when we do push ourselves, we grow.
Yeah. And it's about setting up any individual for success, isn't it? And whatever that is for them, like you said, tiny steps. Some people want to work through bigger steps, but it's whatever is right for them, as to what they see as success and how to get there.
Yeah. And we're there as coaches, holding their hand through it anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, completely.
And supporting them. Right, Rachel, it's been absolutely fabulous to speak to you. So could you please tell people how they can find you?
So you can find me at my website, rachelturnerwellness.co.uk. I'm fairly active on Instagram, and my handle is at Rachel Turner Wellness. They're the two places I'd suggest. I've got my own YouTube channel with lots of self-care sessions and little short sessions to help you start to reprogram that subconscious mind, all themed around different elements of illness. You can find that link through my website, or look at Rachel Turner Wellness on YouTube. But just, I'm always there for a chat, a conversation, asking any questions. I'm very much a believer that community is how we heal. So yeah, always just get in touch. If anything we've talked about today piques your interest, or you've got a question, then just reach out.
Absolutely, reach out, you know, and that's why we're here, isn't it? We're building that community.
Yeah.
And for people listening now, Rachel kindly donated her own healing journey from our book, Heal Yourself. Rachel's journey is in chapter 6. And I shall put a link on, I think, down below here, and I'll share all of Rachel's details as well in the text below, so that you can get hold of Rachel and speak to her. Reach out, just reach out to any of us, because we're all here to help. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because we want to help you on your own journey.
And if any of you are interested in taking any kind of support from me, if you quote this podcast, then you can have 10% off any of my packages. And again, if you want to discuss that, or there's something you want that's slightly different to what you see, just drop me a line.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. It's been fabulous to speak to you.
And you, thank you so much.